Hi, everyone. It's 5 o'clock, so I'm going to open up the meeting. My name is Michelle Keith. I'm Chair of the Board of Health. Um, Emily Michelle, are you present?
Yes.
Yes, and is Richard here? We'll give it a few more minutes. Richard, are you here? Okay, well, we'll mark Richard as not present as of 5 o'clock. If he comes in, we'll record that. I want to remind everybody that the meeting is being recorded so that everyone's aware. You do get a message, but we just want to make sure that everybody is aware. Oh, there's Richard. Fantastic. Okay. Hi, Richard. We just wanted to put down on the record that you were present. Richard Romero. Richard, are you
Okay,
present?
sorry. Yes, I am. Sorry about that.
Okay, I just need to have the roll call. So, okay, so we're all here. That's fantastic. So we have an appointment. Let me go to the agenda here. These days, it's wonderful to have everything online, but sometimes it's a little bit hard to go back and forth from screens. So we have a 5 o'clock appointment on the notification of enforcement for installer Gary Nichols for plat 41 lot 5390 Fisher Road, Dartmouth. Chris, do you want to give us an update on this?
Yes, thank you. So
Thank you.
at the last meeting, the board took an action to suspend the license of the installer, Gary Nichols, and to provide today with an opportunity for him to address the board's concerns with the delayed process of the installation of the septic system at 390 Fisher Road. We've been out to the site to inspect the finished grading that did occur sometime around the last meeting. It appears that it's largely covered. However, I cannot adequately determine if it's finished, if the finished grade is in accordance with 310 CMR 15255. There are some areas that the slope does appear to be a little bit steeper than 3:1, and not knowing where the proximity of the system is and trying to extrapolate, do they have the right horizontal setback in 3:1? I cannot answer that at this time. I don't know if Mr. Nichols is here today to, discuss the situation, and if you'd like to hear from him, next, and then I could follow up if the board has any concerns with the grading as to what we could possibly look for.
Chris, I'm interested in knowing what would you need to be able to know that it's meeting the requirements?
Ultimately, it would be so when a septic system is completed, the design engineer returns to the property and does an as-built survey. The as-built survey demonstrates the horizontal and vertical location of the septic system components and then plots that on a plan. We do not require a grading as-built. A grading as-built would be after the system is built, and it would show how the grades lay out in conformance with the septic system and does it meet 310 CMR 15255. We know that the down gradient neighbor, has retained an attorney because of their concerns with the grading and reported damage to their property while the system sat exposed and water was directed to their property. So, if we're signing off and at some point, if Mr. Nichols signs the installer certification, we're issuing a certificate of compliance saying everything is in compliance. With the concern about the northeast corner of the system being steeper than what 3:1 appears to look like, the only way we'll know is with an as-built.
Thank you so much. Emily Michelle, do you have any questions of Chris?
Just if he has recommendations. I know in our past meeting, we talked about, the license and permit. I want to hear what Chris recommends.
Okay, and Richard, do you have any questions of Chris?
No, just yeah, exactly
Okay.
what you recommend.
Fantastic.
So
Mr. Nichols, are you here? Is somebody here from Mr. Nichols? Somebody here from the home? Okay, I just want to note that at 5:05 PM, there appears to be nobody here in the meeting representing Mr. Nichols for this particular property or this particular property at 390 Fisher Road, Dartmouth. Chris, what are your recommendations?
So at this point, you know, we have put a tremendous amount of resources and time into this. I have not experienced anything like this in 28 and a half years.
Yeah.
With trying to get a system that could have been graded, finished graded in late October when this system was built, to go through multiple notices, multiple phone calls, and having a constable serve the installer. This is the second chance now, so we're going down the same path as we did to seek the completion of the system. So the board right now, you know, can entertain a final action on this hearing, and that final action can include up to a 2-year revocation of the permit. The permit is issued in the Board of Health's name, so, you know, as far as what the outcome should be, whether it should be 2 years less, or, you know, I think that's for the individual members to decide, since ultimately when the permit is issued, it is in your name.
Chris, this is my question. If we do a 2-year revocation, is there any way for Mr. Nichols to remedy that? Or does he just have to live with the 2-year revocation?
Title V does have a provision where anyone aggrieved by, there is a process through Superior Court, and that would be it.
Oh, this is too bad, but this is highly unusual, as you said. Emily, Michelle, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like when I talked to Chris about this, that this is a months-long issue. And, you know, I have a similar question as far as what you said, how long does it last for? But, you know, this is a waste of staff time and money to go after this. So, yeah, I do lean towards being strict.
Richard, do you have any questions?
No, same concerns, but also how would this affect the neighbor that has the suit? You know, if it's not completed, or you know, how does it look on us if we issue a
That's an excellent question. That's an excellent question. Chris, how will this affect the neighbor?
So at this point, yeah, the neighbor has retained counsel to pursue, any civil remedies, that they see appropriate. Well, if the system is graded out in accordance with 310 CMR 15255, and the system has been built in accordance with 310 CMR 1500, there may be regulations that are adhered to strictly, but it doesn't mean that there is not civil liability, and that is the venue for the court system.
Now,
if my
Gary
property,
Nichols-
your property, even though I'm doing everything proper, but you suffer civil harm, then that's for the courts to decide.
So Gary Nichols is the installer, but the homeowner of 390 Fisher Road, have we heard anything from them?
Occasionally we have through the process. He was, told us about who he hired, which wasn't Mr. Nichols. Mr. Nichols pulled the permit. Told us all of that. Unfortunately, if Mr. Nichols doesn't sign off, it will put the homeowner in a situation. Now, the homeowner could then, seek civil remedy to force Mr. Nichols to sign off. But again, that'll be for Mr. Nichols to pursue.
So-
excuse me, for Mr. Manise.
If we do the revocation to Mr. Nichols, how is that going to affect the homeowner?
Well, at this point in time, this is our second chance to try to discuss this with Mr. Nichols.
Yes, but the homeowner seems to be the innocent party here. So what
Right, but I
happens
don't
to the
think-
homeowner?
So what I'm saying is that we've exhausted our options to try to get Mr. Nichols to address the board in his obligations to fulfill the completion of this system adequately, to be here today, to sign off on the septic, and to discuss with you the concerns about the grading. So with that being said, I believe that the board has exhausted its options to try
Okay,
to. force
yes,
Mr.
but
Nichols
my
to
question,
protect
Chris,
the home.
is whether or not the homeowner can they get another installer to home? I mean, what situation is this gonna put the homeowner in?
So they can certainly do that. You know, there's, you know, unfortunately, it's a business deal gone south, and that, you know, the homeowner is gonna, you know, if Mr. Nichols doesn't come and sign off and prove to us that the grading is adequate, the homeowner will have to pursue other options. Now, whether that's with another installer and engineer, or he just goes to court, those are the only two options that would be
If
available.
we do a revocation, will he be able to sign off on it?
Yes, because he's signing off on the past.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Is it possible, would you be comfortable if we did a 6-month revocation
That is
with
a
the
question.
aim of trying to get him in here?
That would be a question. You know, like I said, the permit goes out in the individual, you know, we're issuing a permit, you know, on behalf of the board. And, you know, in looking what has led up to today, what are you comfortable with for an outcome? Because it's ultimately, it's in your name as board members.
I mean, personally, I'd lean towards doing a 6-month revocation and then extending that to a full 2 year. If we do 6 months, can we then do 2 years, or is 2 years our max?
I think if you take an action, I think it's going to be very problematic to try to have an incremental action where you just you just keep building on it.
Just
So
trying to,
To take one final action for revocation, because, you know, once you revoke, it would be very messy, and I'd have a lot of concerns.
2 years is a long time though, Chris.
That is the option of the board, and like I said, you know, it's, you know, I don't, you know, I feel uncomfortable recommending what the duration should be. I think that should be from the members.
Okay. Emily, Michelle, what are your thoughts?
It just sounds like I see your point. I really do. It sounds like he's been given so many opportunities. If we do nothing,
I
don't
definitely
think we
want to
should do
revoke it.
nothing.
For me, it's just a matter of like how long, you know, but I definitely think we should revoke.
So then let me direct my question to Chris. Chris, you can't give an exact timeline. That's for us to decide. Can you give more than one possible timeline? Because it sounds, if I understood you correctly, 2 years is the typical appointment of a license in our town. So if what would be besides 2 years? What would be another possible revocation that we could?
No, so we issue an annual license, but
Okay.
when the board last revised its local regulations, we provided for a penalty, a revocation penalty of up to 2 years. So he couldn't reapply. If the board exercised the 2-year revocation, that would disqualify for, you know, a new application until 24 months had passed.
Can I ask a follow-up question, Michelle? Is that all right?
Sure. The floor is yours, and then we'll switch to Richard and let him ask whatever he'd like.
Is it at all possible, Chris, to issue the revocation up to the point where installers then all have to reapply for their permits, at which time he would have to come before us as a board to request his permit or license be installed again for that year, so that way it would line up with the timing of requesting a permit, or no? Is that too complicated?
I think what you could say is that you could maybe, let me just kind of think this through, revoke for 6 months, and then following, which would bring us to January 2nd, and the possibility to renew on January 2nd only upon meeting with the board and addressing any and all concerns of the board. Failure to meet would instate a full, the full term of, you know what I'm saying? So I don't want to say 2 years, I want the board to decide what the full term of the revocation should be. I think that would be something that's, a lot less problematic, just to say you've lost your license for the rest of this year. You can reapply, you know, in the new year, if you meet with us and, you know, address all concerns that led up to this verification. Otherwise, it would be a, you know, a 1 year, a full 12-month, 18-month, 24-month, whatever, you know, the board so decides.
Yeah.
Richard, do you have any questions?
So while this is going on, while his license gets revoked, the homeowners are still able to get this job done regardless, correct? From getting another, they could get another contractor in to do this.
They could, you know, to finish off the grading, if grading is needed, they'd have to hire an engineer. But also thinking about it, as far as the sign off goes, you can't sign off on that which you did not do. So that's still going to leave the homeowner in a bind.
Yeah.
Because he's going to have to, you know, he's going to have to pursue it civilly in court to force them to come in to sign off. You know, I did have a conversation with Mr. Nichols today. He said he was going to come in, and, you know, I did not, you know, nothing is here on my desk. So,
Did he
you
give
know,
you any explanation, Chris?
about why
But
things,
why, I mean, God knows, I mean, I don't know if there's been deaths in his family or if he's been sick or his spouse is sick. I mean, you never know what's going on with people's lives where they
well, I
appear to be
expressed
irresponsible.
the importance of being here today, and
Yeah.
he said that he, you know, he's like, can I hire someone? I'm not good with Zoom. I said, there's call-in information. It's right there. We sent you the notice. You know that the meeting is today. Because we sent you the notice. We sent him the notice last time.
Wow.
You know, this makes, you know, 2 for 2.
So the homeowner, by not being able to get this signed off on, are they going to be in any trouble with the town?
You know, Title V does have a provision that, you know, those that deal with it on the day-to-day are, you know, unfortunately, those that wrote Title V are not aware of the reality.
Okay.
It says you're not supposed to discharge sewage to a system that you don't have a certificate of compliance on. You know, that's, you know, on a home that requires an occupancy permit, entirely different game. We can interfere with occupancy, but when you've got someone living in a home, and then situations like this, we're not going to pursue enforcement on.
But I don't want anything to happen bad
Right.
to the
So, you know,
because of
so
this
the worst
person.
that's going to happen to the homeowner is that he's not going to be eligible for any tax rebates for the replacement of a failed septic system. And that if he goes to transfer the property in the next 2 years, he's going to have the system inspected because he doesn't have a certificate of compliance.
So say for some reason, Mr. Nichols comes in a month from now and he wants to take care of it. He won't be able to take care of it until next year if we revoke?
If he signs off and presents, you know, if the board decides on a grading as-built, you know, and provides that, you know, but knowing that the down gradient neighbor has reported harm and that they have, you know, sought out counsel, and we've had so many issues with this, and now looking at the grading, and if there's a concern with the steepness, you know, it would be a bit concerning to sign off on this without requiring a grading as-built, if he did come in and sign off.
Okay.
But that would have to
Okey-doke,
come from the board because, you know, historically, we've never required grading as-built. We don't have it in our regs. But as part of an enforcement process for a reconsideration, certainly something that the board may be able to look at.
Yeah, I'm just gonna double check one last time. Mr. Nichols, are you present here at the meeting? Okay, just want to make sure, hello?
I do want to mention there is one phone number that has their hand raised. I'm not sure if
Yeah.
that's who it is, but
It's good evening. It's Jim Marsh. I represent the neighbors. at
Oh,
one
great.
Tony.
Okay, fantastic.
I just wanted to chime in. I know that Chris had mentioned that, you know, at some point there would need to be a grading as-built. Our concern obviously is that there's some steepness on this system that's been built. And the steepness is causing the stormwater to flow onto our property. Is there any way to require or have the homeowner have the obligation to, determine what that steepness or slope is at this point? And, he's already out there lumen seeding, and it would just not make sense for him to do that if there's a need to change what's already been constructed out there because it's not at the 3-to-1 slope. And obviously, we would want to see it at a less steep slope because that would benefit us with any sort of stormwater that's going to flow onto our property. It'd be less.
Christy, is there any way you can respond to that?
Yeah, it's a bit problematic because I don't want to get into a discussion on enforcement strategy. The hope is that, with the 6 month, but again, this is a bit of an uncomfortable situation because I don't want to discuss enforcement strategy with the board's options as to what they may have against recourse against an owner, in light
Yep.
of, what Mr. Marsh has asked.
I mean, ultimately, I would just like to see him come and take care of this. I'm sure everybody, the neighbors, the homeowner, and I'm concerned that if we revoke for 6 months, that's going to push it off to next year. Okay, so that nothing's going to happen until the weather improves. If we do 2 years, I'm saying that just complicates it even longer. I mean, I do think that we need to take some sort of action because we've already deferred, and delayed this and tabled this and given him many chances. Emily, Michelle, and Richard, what are your thoughts?
So I want to make sure I'm understanding. If we revoke his license today for whatever period of time, as I understand it, it's not going to prevent him from going back to this house where there is an issue. It just might give him a bad taste for not wanting to cooperate with the Board of Health, or is that inaccurate, Chris?
I think at this point, it seems to me as though there's been a disinterest in cooperating with the Board of Health because look where we're at.
Yeah.
We're 8 months into this, and I think that's like I go back to in nearly 29 years, I've never seen anything like this. When we've dealt with people that loaned out their permits to unlicensed contractors to do work in town and situations went south, they expressed their frustration, but they snapped to whatever needed to be done and did it. It just goes back to, I think it's been extremely disrespectful of the board for him to, not attend the last meeting, to not attend this meeting, and he can submit something in writing if he doesn't feel comfortable talking. Twice now he stood the board up saying, "We're going to pull your permit." So I honestly, my gut tells me, I don't think he's taking any of this seriously. So why is he going to take anything seriously, again, going forward? I know he does have a permit that he's trying to pull for another job because he wanted to talk to me about that today. So I don't know if that's his greater concern, but again, will he just try to get somebody else to pull permits for him?
I'd be interested, Chris, in revoking potentially for the next 30 days. Only because it's still the summertime and
So what
I
we
would
could,
hope that this issue could be resolved.
so just thinking out loud,
Yeah.
we could just keep this as, keep the suspension tabled for up to 24 months. And until such time that he meets with the board, to address the board's concerns. So it leaves the door open for him to address whatever needs to be addressed.
Okay.
But it prevents him from obtaining any permits for the next 24 months until he meets. And then once he meets,
Okay.
then the board decides thereafter to proceed with how you feel he's treated, the board, That's up to the board members.
And we can revoke the suspension.
Well, you're just gonna keep it suspended until he meets. And we're just.
Okay, but
And if you want to, hey, if you wanted to, so we don't have to keep this on the agenda. So until he says, listen, I want to meet with the board at the next meeting.
okay,
It just falls into uncategorized old business that we don't list on the agenda. And when he says he wants to meet, we'll give him a date and time.
okay. So if we make a motion to revoke his license for the next 2 years, how would we modify that particular motion? We would say,
Nope, it's just gonna be a tabling of it
okay,
to keep it suspended until he meets. And that, just give me further instruction not to put it back on the agenda until such time that he requests a meeting with the board.
but we are actually going to have to act to revoke it.
No, you've already
Okay.
suspended. So you're just going to table the suspension. If
Okay.
you want to just, put that into a motion and vote to, table this just so that it's actually a vote, then there's
Okay.
nothing wrong with that either.
Okay. Emily and Richard, what are your thoughts? Sorry it's taken so long, guys. Just want to try to be fair to everybody.
I think that makes
I
sense.
think that's, yeah, complete sense. It's up to them now.
Okie dokie. So, Chris, you would need a motion to table the suspension until he comes in, let me see here. Until, hold on for a second. Mr. Gary Nichols from 390 Fisher Road of Dartmouth for that particular property comes in and speaks with us. Is that an adequate motion?
Yes.
Okay, can I have a second?
I'll
I
second.
second.
Okay, Emily, did you want to add a finding to that? We don't have to, but if you want to, you can.
No, that's okay. I think for this, I'm okay with
Okay.
just keeping it as
Okay,
is.
so-
Thank you. I
Okay,
appreciate it.
okay, great. Michelle Keith votes yes. Emily, Michelle, how do you vote?
Yes,
Okay, and Richard, how do you vote?
Yes.
Fantastic. Sorry for taking so long on that, folks. We're moving to the 505 UMass Dartmouth McLean Swing Space, Absolution Sink, Jonathan Tolan Plumbing, and Fire Protection Engineer. Is anybody here?
Yes, Jonathan Tolan, Plumbing Fire Protection.
Fantastic. Thank you for being here.
Of course.
So Chris, do you want to talk about this or do you want Jonathan to introduce it?
I can just give the board a brief
Okay.
background because I think this might be the first time that all of the members have faced the plumbing code variance. And it's like, why are we talking about this? I never talked about this before.
Okay, thank you, Chris.
So, in the 1930s, 40s, maybe even in the 50s, the Board of Health employed plumbing inspectors, and we actually wrote our own plumbing code. Then as Massachusetts and society got more complex, the plumbing code diverged from public health, but there's still a public health component in the plumbing code in almost every aspect of it. So with that being said, the plumbing code does have a provision where when you don't meet certain criteria, you can apply for a variance, but they require a letter from the local Board of Health. So that's why we're here today. And with that, I'll turn it over to back to the chair.
Hello? Hello?
Sorry, I had muted myself. Jonathan, did you want to
Yes.
explain to us what you're looking for?
Yes, so to sum it up quickly, all fixtures you install, all plumbing fixtures need to be approved by the Mass Board. This is an ablution sink, so it's a sink for foot washing for religious purposes. There are none of those currently approved by the Mass Board. I spoke with the state inspector, Frederick Lima, and spoke with him about this. He said, he does not oppose it, but we would have to submit a formal variance before we put it in. And part of that variance is getting a letter of no concern from the Board of Health. I can go to some details about this fixture if you would like and why I think it should be fine.
Yes,
Um,
I'd definitely be interested in knowing what this sink is. I'd be concerned about people drowning in it. I mean, is it something that's filled up? If you could explain it, that would be great.
No, am I able to
Okay.
share my screen? I have a cut sheet and photo of it up if that.
Okay, I think Donna handles that, yeah.
So let me know if you guys can see this cut sheet.
Okay, yes, we
Yeah.
can see it.
So it's essentially, right, this is what we're going with. You put your feet on these. This little push button here has I think somewhere from a 15 to 30-second timer. You push it in, it sprays water on your feet, it washes them. It goes through these grates, it drains into an integral P-trap. And then, that would connect to sanitary down and a vent up, and into the sanitary system where, would then leave the building.
Okay. Emily, Michelle, do you have any questions?
You're unmuted.
There's no cross connection
Hello,
for
everybody there?
drinking water.
See? Did the same thing to me.
Sorry, I had a hard time hearing you. What was that, Emily Michelle?
There's
no,
no
that was
cross
somebody
connection
else's.
between. Oh,
Go
Madam
ahead.
Chair, would you like me to ask, or do you want me to back off for
Yes,
now?
no, go ahead. Go ask.
Okay.
No,
There's no cross connection between drinking water and the wastewater?
No.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. Richard, do you have any questions?
Both those things are gonna go in, or is it just one or the other?
It's just the one on the left. It would just be the WD1 version of it.
Okay,
Okay.
that's all I
And
have.
Chris, do you have any concerns with it? Chris, does the Board of Health have any concerns with this particular piece of equipment?
Oh,
All right.
go ahead.
Hi, this is Gary Nichols.
Mr. Nichols,
How you doing today?
pretty good. Hold on for 1 second, please, Mr. Nichols, because we're actually
Thank
having
you.
an appointment with somebody else right now. Thank you. Chris, do you have any concerns with this
I do
particular?
not. I was just having trouble unmuting. I do not have any concerns with this. proposal.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so, I guess you just need a motion to approve this?
I would just need a letter or email from you guys saying, no concern, you take no issue with us installing this. So whatever you guys have to do, yeah.
Yes, that's it. But we would still need to make a motion to vote on it. Chris?
Yes, we will need a motion.
Okay, good. So I'll make a motion to approve this absolution sink at UMass Dartmouth McLean Swing Space. Could I get a second?
I second the motion.
Fantastic. Thank you, Richard. Michelle Keith votes yes. Emily Michelle, how do you vote?
Yes.
Okay, and Richard, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Okay, and Michelle Keith votes yes. Okay, fantastic. So that passes. Now, Mr. Nichols happens to be here, but Mr. Nichols, we spent quite a long time on your appointment and other people have been waiting. So we're gonna move forward and we're gonna do the 5:10 and the 5:15, because right now it's 5:33. Most of that time was spent on your situation. So we're gonna go to Mr. Hero next. Mr. Nichols, we'd ask that you stay on the line, but Mr. Hero has been waiting patiently and we'd like to address his issue because his appointment was at 5:10. Mr. Hero, and Chris, did you want to introduce this or you want Mr. Hero to introduce it?
No, Alan can go first.
Okay, thanks. Mr. Hero, go ahead.
Hi, good evening, Madam Chairperson and members
Thanks.
of the board. For the record, my name is Alan Haru, and for this public appointment, I'm representing Sarah B. O'Leary, owner of a single-family house at 19G Smith's Way. The septic system repair plan is dated June 6th, 2024, and revised June 24th, 2024, with the staff's recommendations or comments. The system is designed completely in compliance with the State Environmental Code Title V. We propose a new 1,500-gallon septic tank for primary treatment and the use of Elgin GSF modules and alternative sewage disposal system approved for remedial use under 310 CMR 15-284. The proposed soil absorption system or leaching bed is located on the high side of the lot at the edge of a lawn area. The leaching bed is more than 100 feet away from existing wells, 20 feet setback from the house foundation, 124 feet away from the salt marsh to the north, and 55 feet setback from the top of Coastal Bank to the south. We respectfully request a single waiver from the 100-foot setback from the salt marsh at the base of the Coastal Bank to a soil absorption system in the Dartmouth Board of Health Supplemental Regulations, Section 15-11. The proposed soil absorption system is set back 71 feet from the salt marsh to the south, which exceeds the 50-foot requirement in Title V. The proposed system is located as far away from the salt marsh as practicable, given the several large oak trees at the edge of the yard that we would like to save. I have provided photos of the site to the board, and I'm happy to share my screen, show you the plan, or answer any questions you have if you'd like.
Fantastic. Chris, do you have any comments?
I do not. This is a challenge, that it's a challenging location. This is a peninsula and, we've worked on about, I think this is at least my third house on the peninsula and, everyone's had waivers or variances.
Fantastic. Okie dokie. Emily, Michelle, do you have any questions?
No, so if you were to put it more towards the northern part of the lot, you just run into that other salt marsh, right?
Yes, the soil absorption system, we're pumping up to the highest point on the lot, so 19 feet above sea level, and it's at the edge of a yard area, and there's a number of large oak trees at the edge of the yard areas that we'd like to save. So there was no modeling, no seasonal high groundwater to a depth of 10 feet. It's sandy soils. It's an outwash cane deposit. So yeah, that's the reason that we pushed it as far. We're within 9 feet of these large oak trees. So that's, but it's at the highest point on the block.
Any other questions, Emily?
Not questions, no.
Awesome. Fantastic. Richard, do you have any questions?
I do not have any questions. Pretty clear. Thank you.
Okay. Emily, do you want to make a finding or do you want to go forward with just a motion?
Yeah, sure. No, I was writing down
Okay.
a finding. So
Okay.
finding that this system is located, as far away from the wells as you can be, while also still being placed on the lot such that it's, the highest possible elevation and far away from the salt marsh. I move to approve the plan for plat 14 lot 10 at 19 Smiths Way.
Can we have a second?
I second.
Fantastic, Richard. Thank you so much. Michelle Keith votes yes. Emily, Michelle, how do you vote?
Yes.
And Richard, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Mr. Horo, we greatly appreciate your patience and waiting.
Thank you, Michelle, and thank
Thank
you,
you, now.
members of the board. Have a good summer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Take care. Now, 5:15 p.m., public hearing for revisions to the Town Dartmouth Land Development and Reuse Regulation. Revise Section 4 by adding new listed uses. Chris, did you want to update us?
Sure. So this is a public hearing. So as part of the public hearing, we have to state the purpose to provide a summary purpose of the local regulation that we're proposing. So if the board would like me to do that, I can do that now.
Yes, I would love for you to do that. Thank you.
So our existing land development reuse regulations was put forth about 2018. And that was done in response, even 17 or 16, excuse me. That was done in response to diminishing land supply and looking to alternative parcels of industrial use for development into residential use. Those regulations were created and they have been in effect since. As a result of information that we've learned with this one-of-a-kind regulation, we're getting more into the realm of environmental work, where our only aspect of environmental work is with Title V. So we're learning that there are other industries that are not included in the regulations that should be included, such as wood storage areas, wood yards. Those can have impacts on the groundwater. Or sawmills, where they may resaw painted, treated, coated wood and leave the residuals of those metals in the soil. So the purpose behind this proposal today is to update the regs by providing a few additional land uses that would trigger an environmental site assessment for a conversion of land from the listed land use to the protected uses, which would be daycare, school, residential, agriculture, for example. There's one other change that is in the regulations that I didn't discuss with the board, and that is I did change the date. So the listed land uses only come into effect if it occurred on or after 1950. That date was established because when these regulations were first proposed, there was a lot of concern about town records and how are we going to establish what occurred in earlier years prior to 1950. Well, a few years after these regulations were adopted, the Bliss Corner RFI, the request for information, resulted in this office spending 1,100 hours reading town records of the two primary and most significant permitting departments. And what we learned from that is that, yeah, there are records that show up to 1930, and there is opportunity now. So I did include that revision. I didn't discuss it last time as I took a quick look through. So if the board considers these regulations and changes to, I know I discussed at the last meeting about adding these new listed uses, but I did not discuss the changing of the date. So you could accept the changes in whole or in part. And that is all I have to say, but we will have to open it up to public comment if there's any.
Yes. First of all, Emily, Michelle, do you have any questions?
No, I certainly defer to Chris's expertise with this.
Okay. Fantastic. Richard, do you have any questions?
No, and the same.
Okay, fantastic. Is there anybody here in attendance that has any questions or comments on this particular issue? Hearing no response at 5:42, we've closing the public comment part of this meeting.
Gary's
Chris?
here.
Oh yeah, Gary,
Sorry,
we're finishing the 5:15. We're finishing the 5:15 matter, and then we'll get to you. So hold on for 1 second. Let us just wrap this up. So,
God, I thought this.
we need, wait, Mr. Nichols, please let us finish. We need a motion to, I would suggest adopting these changes in whole. I don't know how the other board members feel.
Absolutely.
Richard?
Absolutely. Yes,
Okay.
I agree.
So I'd make a motion to, hold on, let me just go to the agenda, to adopt the revisions to the Town of Dartmouth Land Development and Reuse Regulations, revising section 4 by adding the new listed uses and the additional date that Chris addressed, and basically adopt these changes in whole to this particular section 4. So I make that motion. Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, fantastic. Michelle Keith votes yes. Emily, Michelle, how do you vote?
Yes.
Yes, and Richard, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Fantastic. Okay, now we've completed the appointments. Mr. Nichols, you're here.
Yes, he is. Hold on. He had to call
Okay.
me and I'm connecting him from my computer and he's on
Okay.
his cell phone. So I apologize.
Okey
I put
dokey.
the phone up for him right now.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah. Go ahead, Gary.
Hi, how you doing?
Hi, Mr. Nichols. Thank you for being here.
I was there the whole time. I just couldn't speak. I listened to the whole
Really?
meeting.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
terrible. That had to be
I
very,
heard-
very
I heard all
difficult
the
for you.
2 years, the 6 months. I heard the other guy raise his hand and it was the neighbor's guy.
Okay,
And I heard the whole conversation, but
Well-
it wouldn't let me speak.
that had to be very, very frustrating. I'm so sorry that happened to you. I'm really glad you were here. That makes me feel so much better about this. I'm sorry
I
that you
called
couldn't
Dave, he
speak.
gave me.
Just so you know, I'm on the like a same call. I came home. My name is David Vermette. And I got on my computer. I got Gary on a speakerphone and I'm holding him on the phone to my computer so he can talk to you guys.
Thank you for doing that. That's
problem.
wonderful of you. I appreciate that when people work together. Chris, did you have any questions for Mr. Nichols?
So we do have a problem here, and that is that we did have someone from the public that was at the hearing earlier. We did close it, for a future discussion. So I do have concerns with any, discussions to finalize this. If the board wants to hear, provide some time, but I would be very concerned about changing any course of action
Okay.
without putting this to the next meeting.
Okay, so I would like to hear from Mr. Nichols to see if we could find out if there's going to be any resolution to the situation. Mr. Nichols is here. He couldn't speak earlier, which was very unfortunate, but I would definitely like to hear from him. Mr. Nichols,
Yes.
you want to tell us what's been going on? Why is the delay? And I guess there's quite a big problem with the 3-to-1 slope that's causing issues for the neighbor. So just would like to hear, why haven't you been responding to the board, and why is this such an ongoing issue?
Well, I was actually with the person that owns the property, and I thought everything was good. I was out there working, and I tried to do it before the meeting, and I didn't know it was going to cause a problem. I planted the grass before the meeting.
Yeah, but what I'm talking about is we've been asking you to come to the meetings, and we've been reaching out to you for quite a while now, and we haven't heard anything from you.
I'm not really a Zoom guy. I tried it last time where I was, and I couldn't get on. And I called people today. I was willing to hire somebody today because I knew this was going to happen. I'm sitting here trying to do it, and it just won't let me go.
Okay, but I'm talking about this particular property. Getting to the everything done the way it's supposed to be done, solving this issue with the slope, making sure that we can get the as-built plan for the grading so that, this can be over with and done.
Well,
How
I
long
no
have we been
problem going
waiting,
back and
Chris?
Doing whatever we need to do.
Okay, Chris, how long have we been waiting for this to be taken care of?
The system was completed in late October, which is still a time when you could do
I think
loam and
that's
seed.
in October, yeah.
And then, we gave, time, considering that the winter time, you don't want to put loam and seed down, although we do see people do it. We gave
I know, but it never grows.
window,
Waste of time. Yeah,
and then
we tried to do it, but the problem we had in April.
oh,
and
can we
I
just
blamed
have
every
one
committee.
person speaking at a time, Madam Chair?
Yes, yeah, no, I wasn't certain what was going on, whether or not somebody else was talking on the other side. I was going to be asking him to mute, but I realized that he's trying to respond. Please, Mr. Nichols, let Chris finish, and then you can
Yeah.
respond, okay? Because we have to have one person talking at a time.
So
Okay, go
then,
ahead, Chris.
so then we, gave timeframes to complete the system, which lined up with springtime. That wasn't adhered to, and then we ended up, going, that was the writing route. Then we had other calls before then, and then finally we had, to serve by constable,
Oh, my goodness. Okay,
So-
so what I'm hearing, Chris, is that you reached out in October, you reached out in April, no response in October, no response in April, and then you had to serve by constable when?
I want to say that was in May or
In May. Okay, and then we had the last meeting. There was no response, and Mr. Nichols, you can respond in writing, even though you're not familiar with Zoom, you can go to the Board of Health or write to the Board of Health and respond in that way.
I won't.
I'm sorry?
I actually walked into the office 3 times.
Okay, Chris?
I actually walked in for a final inspection 2 days before the last meeting.
Okay. So what took place, Chris, during that? Did you happen to meet with Mr. Nichols or not?
So, and he did call the day of the meeting as expressed earlier, and we discussed this at
Okay.
our last meeting. Something that took 6 months to get to, and then once we hold feet to the fire, but that still doesn't excuse the disinterest in responding to the board at that hearing. Again, it could have been, meeting. We talked about that at the last hearing where I said, we got a call and said that everything is done. But now we're being held to a tighter time frame for something that took 6 months, 7 months to get to.
Yes, that's very, very frustrating. Okay, we did table the suspension until next month, Mr. Nichols.
Yes.
What I would suggest is perhaps between now and our next meeting, I don't have the date readily available. Chris, when's our next meeting?
It may be July 23rd, but we have to just check on some matters. And, you know,
Okay.
at the end of this meeting, we do have to schedule for, you know, ideally try to schedule for August and September.
So the
Okay,
job
so-
I have going on now, do I stop?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that. What, repeat that, please?
The job that I have going on now, do I stop them?
Is this a different property?
Yeah, I guess his question is, just so we can hear it a little better, he's got other jobs going on different properties that he had already approved permits on. What's he's to do with those jobs? If he's, I don't know if it's exactly where, the location, he's just asking other jobs he started in Dartmouth that he's pulled permits on.
Chris, can you address that?
So I would ask for what specific property you have an open permit on, because I'm unaware of any.
I came into you to pull a permit, you asked me not to pull it.
So you do not have a permit and you have work going on at this time?
Working on the job. I went there and pulled the well out, filled the sand in, got it all ready. I got the water department. I got the water line going in probably Monday. Do I stop and not do the septic?
That's work that's needed so that a permit can be ultimately pulled for the installation of that system, but you do not have a permit from this office for that installation.
And you asked me not to pull the permit when I came in, because you had no jurisdiction to force the water line.
That
So you
was
asked
not,
me to
that
make
was,
the well.
so let's just back up a bit, but we're getting off topic here. But as far as saying no jurisdiction on what, the board approved the plan for Colebrook Lane that required abandonment of a well and installation of a water line. That is the fact. To say that this board has no jurisdiction or any agent of the board has no jurisdiction.
saying that at all.
Excuse me. That has no jurisdiction is imaginative. The board approved the plan and that is the record work that must occur.
Okay. So if that was the case.
And
when
this
I-
is a different property. This is a different property than Fisher Road,
Correct.
okay?
So I went in to
So-
pull the permit for the septic. I wasn't doing the water line.
Madam Chair, we're kind of getting
Yes.
way off topic, you know, and we're just going into this, we're just, you know, it's, you know, there are no open permits right now that Mr. Nichols has identified that he has with this office to install a
Okay.
septic.
Okay. So there are no open permits. So we did table the suspension for the next meeting. Mr. Nichols, I would suggest that you try to address the slope issues. And whatever other issues are going on as far as getting the as-built. For the 390 Fisher Road so that we can wrap up that property and have everybody move on. I would suggest that you address that and take care of the business that is required for that piece of property and come to the next meeting. And we can put you on down with an appointment and we can see, you know, where that suspension will be lying at that point in time. And I
Okay.
apologize that you couldn't talk earlier, but no, nevertheless,
no,
it
yeah,
still
please.
needs to be addressed. I'm sorry?
So I can go work there, right?
So what he's trying to make sure, I think he's asking so he can hear it better, I'm just conveying he can go back to the Fisher property and make the corrections, is that what you're asking? That's what I understand.
Chris, that he can make the corrections to Fisher Road.
But that's simple grading. That's just
Yeah.
earthwork.
Okay, now just,
Yeah.
I think that's what he was asking, that's all, I'm
Okay,
just trying to
yeah.
let you guys hear what he's saying, that's all I'm doing here, so.
I wonder what, I think what you're doing is fantastic. I appreciate that very much. So yes, it would be wonderful to get that work done on Fisher Road and have this be over with because it's taken a
And-
huge amount of
I'll make sure that my office is available for him to use next week, next meeting, so
Great.
he can be on the call
Fantastic.
from the beginning and
You
you can
know,
talk to him, see him, the whole works,
and-
okay?
just so you know, what's frustrating for us is that the Board of Health has a very, very limited number of staff members and it has a limited budget. When they have to pay a constable and we have to again and again and again put something on an agenda, that costs money, that the taxpayers of Dartmouth are paying money for that. It's time and labor and money. So, you know, this is something that we take seriously. You know, if you came in and addressed this right from the beginning, we would be spending less resources on it. So I appreciate that you're here, Mr. Nichols, and it would be wonderful if this could be resolved.
I'll take care of it. Thank you.
And
Okay,
I'm
take
pretty
care.
computer literate, so I will help him get everything
Thank you
organized
so much.
so that we can
Thank
hopefully
you.
resolve this next meeting, okay?
Thank you so much.
I'm a
Take care
developer in
now.
town. I develop a lot, so I'm familiar with the processes.
Thank you. Thank you so much
Okay.
for being thoughtful.
Thank
Okay,
you. Bye-bye.
take care now. Okie dokie. Okay, next item. We can go to the minutes of the June 6th, 2024 meeting. Can I have a motion to approve those minutes? Or what? Are there any discussions or concerns with the minutes? Emily, Michelle, and Richard?
No.
No? Hearing none? Could I get a motion to approve the minutes of the June 6th, 2024 meeting?
I move to approve the minutes for Thursday, June 6th, 2024 for the Board of Health.
Thank you. Can I get a second? I'll second that motion. Michelle Keith votes yes. Emily, Michelle, how do you vote?
Yes.
And Richard, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Fantastic. The minutes are accepted. So let's see here. Environmental site assessment for map 33 lot 18-6 off of Woodcock Road. Chris, what's up with this?
So as discussed earlier, with the board has the land development reuse regulations. This parcel on Fisher Road, Woodcock Road, fell within one of the listed land uses. And that was contractor's yard, and there's also composting that was going on there. The landowner is intending to convert it into a residential lot or a single-family dwelling, and they have submitted this environmental site assessment. Now, our environmental site assessment requirements is that it meets either the mass contingency plan phase 1, which requires a certain amount of soil testing and groundwater testing, or the ASTM phase 1 and 2. It's relatively similar, almost entirely similar. It was done due to nuances within the industry so that we could not ruffle any feathers within licensed site professionals, because we were applying regulation standards to not sites that didn't have a release. And they always wanted to talk about that. So we just said, okay, then do the ASTM phase 1 or 2. So they're both the same recipe for the investigation. So we have this before us, and that it will default approve if the board doesn't refer, if the board does not refer it to a third party consultant. I do have concerns that the report that we have is not sufficient. I have looked at it. I do not see any mention of groundwater testing, although I do see that they did encounter groundwater. And that the testing really was kind of hot spotted around the composting area, but there wasn't any in that narrow edge of the lot that had the contractor's yard disturbance on it. So my recommendation would be for the board to consider the third-party consultant. And if the board does vote in favor of that, the applicant would need to deposit with the town an amount of money in a 53G account, which is an interest-bearing account that's used to pay for the board's third-party consultant, and any monies left over would be returned. And then
Michelle, do you have any questions? I'm sorry, Chris, go ahead.
and that if the board did engage an environmental site assessment third-party reviewer, that person then decides, it wouldn't come back to the board. The way the regulations are written is that the third-party reviewer then determines sufficiency. Is it sufficient? Is it not? If it's not, then they have to work with the board's third-party reviewer to fill in those gaps to completion. And then once the third-party reviewer says that it's complete, it's final.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Chris. Emily, Michelle, do you have any questions? You're on mute. You're on mute.
I
Emily, I'm sorry.
apologize.
I did that
I
earlier
am-
too.
I turned on a fan. I was trying to delay noise. I lean with Chris. I defer to his judgment, and I had a conversation with him. This is when you turn a lot that hasn't been used into a potential house, you want to take it very seriously. So the lack of groundwater samples and that potential other disturbed area, I see why Chris hesitates, and I absolutely think we should have it go before another third party.
And Richard, do you have any comments, questions?
No, I don't have any comments. I do feel comfortable with a third-party consultant or reviewer to connect. To this.
Would you guys, one of you guys make a motion for that?
Sure, I have a finding written down. And actually, let me just make sure, Chris, it would be, we would move to have the applicant hire a third-party consultant, or is there different wording that we would
No.
need for that?
That the Board of Health would engage a third-party consultant
Okay,
that would begin upon the deposit of necessary funds into a 53G account, with the town of Dartmouth.
okay, I think I've got it. So finding that the presented soil testing results do not include groundwater samples and does not include another area appearing to be disturbed, I move to have the property map 33 lot 18-6 off of Woodcock Road, have the applicant, have the Board of Health engage a third party to begin upon deposit of necessary funds to the 53G account by the applicant.
I second the motion for a third-party consultant reviewer for this property. I vote yes. Michelle Keith votes yes. Emily, Michelle, how do you vote?
Yes.
And Richard, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Fantastic, that's done. So now we're going to old business. We've
I have
got
a
Anthony-
question.
We are the
I'm sorry.
property owners of Woodcock Road.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize that. I thought you were the next person. Okay, go ahead.
No,
What would you like to say?
Well, I got one thing. The groundwater testing wasn't done for necessary needs because we've tested the soil and then it came back all clean. If it would came back dirty or something happened, we would have gone lower. The town actually has groundwater testing from the lot north of it when he did his well about 7 years ago. And that came back clean. So I'm assuming the water is tested, it's fine. That's why we didn't pursue it any farther. Didn't need to because every well that's on that plot was tested and it's all fine. And now this 53G thing, is it something that I have to pay for and put in an account and you guys hire it? And if it comes back clean, do I get my money back or how does this work? Because it feels like I'm being forced to do something that feel the need that I don't need to do, that I've required everything you guys asked me to.
Okay, a little bit concerned here. There's no mention of groundwater testing. Chris, there's no mention of groundwater testing in the record?
So I can address that.
Okay.
So, the testing that the gentleman is referring to is the standard potability tests that occurred in the deep well shafts on adjacent house lots. That is not what is looked for in this ASTM Phase 1, 2 or MCP Phase 1 requirement. Also within our ESA, we do have a time frame of 2 years, so that if someone turns in data that's older than 2 years, it's inadmissible. So those are
Okay.
within our regulations as well. So, we are aware of well testing throughout town, but it's for potability. It's not for environmental site assessment. And as for the 53G account, that is money that is paid by the applicant. It is held in an interest-bearing account, and it's held in accordance with Mass General Laws 50. I believe it's 53G. And what it does is any money's not used at the end get returned back to the applicant.
Okay. And so this is not something, this is pretty complicated. This is not something that the homeowners would be able to do on their own without a consultant?
Well, so what's happened now is that with the submission of this as with the submission of the report before the board as an ESA, an environmental site assessment, The board has to determine if it's complete or not. And we know that
Exactly.
the requirements in our regulations do require groundwater sampling, and that sampling wasn't provided in that report to the board.
Okay, so what we're missing is the groundwater sampling?
You know, at a minimum, yes. And then, you know,
Okay.
just in looking at how it was hot spotted, you know, should it have been broader? You know, I do recommend to the board, as I previously did, that, you know, a consultant is warranted.
Okay,
Sure.
go ahead, Mr.
Well,
Ferrera.
I hired a consultant, environmentalist.
Okay.
All the
Okay, good.
all the soil sampling that we did there was sent out to a laboratory. It all came back. I just feel wondering why I have to keep pursuing this. And also I have one more question. Like, how much is this third party going to cost now? Are you handling everything, or am I handling everything? I'd like to find all that out. How much it's going to cost? Do I get my money back if it comes back clean? I'm just trying to figure all this out.
Yeah. Chris, how much does that type of, you have to determine how does that get determined? The amount of,
The consultant is a third party reviewer. The consultant isn't like a lottery where if the results go this way or that way, it's to retain a person to conduct consultative services for the board when they so determine on a matter. So the fee is paid by the applicant, and any monies that are left over do get returned.
No, I get
No,
that.
Chris,
how much? How
yeah,
much?
how much is that?
When it comes to cost, you know, we do have to, you know, make a few phone calls, but, you know, typically what we've been seeing for cost, you know, had been, you know, it's you know, it's several $1,000s, depending upon the complexity of it. You know, it's been a number of years, so I don't know what, you know, things cost in the last 2 to 3 years with all of the inflation and everything else. But you'll be provided with the name of the consultant
Okay.
and the amount of money.
Okay.
It is, you know, it is something that, you know, the board does, you know, have that authority to request a consultant for review on situations where they feel that more expertise is needed. And, you know, knowing that the report right now doesn't have groundwater sampling, you know, that is a concern, and that the board, you know, what else, you know, may be missing with respects to the phase 1, phase 2 standard or the MCP phase 1 standard.
Okay, now if I move forward with all this and it comes back, everything comes back fine, do I get reimbursed for it?
No.
Isn't that like, basically you're forcing me to do something that I provided a lot for you? Can we just do the groundwater testing, or what would you like? To move on your own and then you take care of all this and then you hire the person and then I just pay you?
So we have a report before the board today that was
Correct.
submitted as an environmental site assessment.
Correct.
And that my review of it has determined that it is incomplete.
Okay,
and that the board does have to take an action on this.
Okay.
Okay.
And that there is more to the report than just groundwater sampling, and that's where a third-party reviewer can come in and determine, is this report entirely complete and what aspects are not.
Okay. No, my whole thing is, it's like I'm basically getting forced to do this twice. You know, and it's starting to get frustrated because I got forced to redo wetlands again. I got reforced to do a bunch of stuff that was already pre-done in 2004 when the lot was done, and it's just over and over and over again spending extra money. My whole thing is, if those tests came back clean from a national laboratory, I just don't understand what's the issue here. I just find that the scientists that tested the land came back clean.
So that land was never used prior. The piles of dirt that you had saw was because my brother had built his house next door. So he had dug out his foundation, his septic and well, and placed that dirt on my piece of land, which at the time was not in my name. So that was the pictures, I believe, that was picked up with the aerial
Okay.
view. So it's clean soil, it's native land. It was just shifted from his lot to mine until he had to use it to fill the front of his property. And that's when he built his home, and I believe it was in 2015, 2016.
And the other one too, the other lot too.
So it's not that that construction company on the other side was dumping. That was not the case. It was the personal residential on the other side that was pulling out his dirt to put on mine until he finished completing his home.
Okay. So Chris, I have a question. This is not just an issue of the groundwater sampling, because I mean, I'm just trying to take a look at it from the homeowner's perspective. You know, we all have limited money, and if there's a way to save some money, we try to do that, you know. But it's not just the groundwater testing, it's a little bit more complicated. And I just want you to know, Chris is not necessarily being the bad guy here. He's trying to
I'm
make
not
sure that we're following the regulations. That's all.
We
Do you know what I'm
understand.
saying? So,
Yes.
Yeah, we
but
understand.
so-
It's just,
yeah.
it's just, you asked me to do something, I do it. I went
Yeah.
to, I went in front of, I had to redo the wetline. It was already done in
Yeah.
2004. I had to redo it again. I had to redo plot assessments again. I had to, now it's,
Yeah.
they asked me to do a testing. I did that. Now I'm asking
Yes.
to redo another testing.
So,
It's,
I-
it's.
Yeah, I just want to get a little bit of clarification. So Chris, it's
Okay.
more than just the groundwater testing?
Yes, and just, I understand where, the gentleman's coming from that, but we know that there's already, a gap in the report. And, just to kind of go back a little bit to address,
Okay.
about, what triggered this report or not. It goes back to, what we discussed earlier in the public hearing, whereas if the listed land use was occurring at a certain point, we also have, the division and aggregation of land component. They're very technical regulations. So
Yeah.
the regulations do cleanly apply to this in looking at the chain of title and the land use with all of the dates in which all of it occurred.
Yeah.
So the question before the board is, do you want to retain a consultant to determine if this report is fully complete or how incomplete? Or, do you not? If you do not, then the report
Yeah.
by default. Now, another option for the applicant would be, is everything just kind of sits in limbo in the meantime. Now, if you want to go back to your consultant and say, listen, can you, address what's missing? And then they submit another report to us. That's a way around it, because this report just sits in limbo waiting for you to pay the money. But if you, work with the consultant to get whatever additional is needed for ASTM 1 and 2 or MCP phase 1, then we would get a new report and look at that and then bring that back to the board to make a determination.
Okay, now that you've read the report, what is missing? So
Again, I
write it
don't
down.
want, just seeing that groundwater alone is missing, I am not going to go further beyond that.
Okay,
Because,
what else?
no,
I think, no, Mr. Ferrer, you've got to talk to your consultant that you hired, that the person that put this report together. Mr. Machado is offering you the opportunity to go back to whomever you've hired and get them to do the report the way they're supposed to do the report.
Okay.
So I mean,
don't-
it's I'm saying, like, this guy or gal, whoever it was that you hired,
Mhm.
obviously didn't make a complete report, and that's why
Okay.
Chris and the department has to go and make this move to get a third-party consultant to make sure that it's complete. So,
Okay.
what do you want to do?
My thing is, I would just like to know what it is so I can ask her to do it and have the consultants do it. And then I don't.
But your consultant should know, the person that you're paying money for this report should know what's missing, should know how to do a complete report. That's why we're moving to get the third-party consultant. You know what I'm saying? To make sure that the report is complete.
Okay.
because the
Okay.
report that we have is not.
Oh, no, because that's what I was just trying to
So,
ask. I figured
yeah.
it was public record.
So-
You'd let me know what was missing that way,
Yeah.
so I know I can
Well, no,
ask
no,
her.
this is, these folks who submit these reports, that's their job. Their
Okay.
job is to make sure that the report, they know what's supposed to be in these reports. That's what they're getting paid for. Okay?
Okay.
You shouldn't be going through this. That
I know, I
report shouldn't
shouldn't.
be complete. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know,
Yeah.
yeah, so, you know, do you want to go the third party consultant route where you put the 53G deposit down? Do you want to go back to your consultant and try to get them to correct the report?
Yeah, we'll
What
go
would you
back to our consultant and ask her if she can have the completed report. Because it seems like we definitely need to do some groundwater testing, items like that she's missing.
Okay, so now, Chris, what do you want to do? What, should we make a motion? A new motion in this particular case?
Nope, the board doesn't need to. As mentioned, if the monies don't get paid into the 53G account, then it just sits in limbo.
Okay, so you know what? I hope that you can get the consultant that you've already paid money to do what they're supposed to do.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah.
so, you know, I'm sorry that I didn't realize that you were here for that particular hearing. I apologize for not hearing you earlier. I'm glad that we did get a chance to talk, and I understand your frustration. I hope you understand that the board has got to follow the regulations.
Oh, I
You know, so we're
understand.
not trying to be too difficult with you. We're just trying to do what we're supposed to do.
No,
So,
I understand. I
okay.
understand a lot. I understand very well. My problem is it's just everything with the town I've paid twice already, and it's starting to get frustrating.
It's very frustrating. It's very
Paid
frustrating.
twice,
We're all,
and then it's almost like
we
you're
all
forced
get
to pay again to pay
frustrated.
again. You're making me forced to
Yes,
pay
yes.
another thing, environmental test.
Yeah.
And it's
Well,
twice
hopefully
already.
hopefully this first consultant does the report the way they're supposed to.
Okay.
So thank you so much. You have any other questions?
No. Okay. How can
Okay.
when can I find out how much it's going to cost me? And
If
I
we
have
go
to
the third party consultant
yes,
route,
if we
Chris?
go the third party route, when do I find out how much it's going to cost me? When can I get that report?
You know, with the holiday week upon us, it can be a little bit of a weird week, you know, so I have to put it out till like Monday, Tuesday, just not knowing, you know, if people, you know, a lot of small businesses close this week.
Yes.
Okay.
So it'll be next week, Chris?
Yes,
So Monday,
Okay.
Tuesday, you think?
that's my hope.
All right. I'll see you Monday, Tuesday then.
Fantastic. Thank you. Take care. Have a good 4th of
You
July.
too. Bye
Thank
now.
you, you as well.
Okey-dokey. Okay, take care. So
Bye
let's
now.
see here. We're going to the old business of the Antonia Raposo and Paul Raposo, Plat 39, Lot 11 at 709 Russell Mills Road. Domestic animal permit, the applications for 30 chickens and application for 5 horses. Chris, what is going on here?
Thank you. So this is we've tabled this animal permit application.
Yeah.
So that it could work through conservation, because conservation seemed to be the primary, I want to say, authority on this matter. Because if they don't permit the enclosures, then the whole animal permit goes away. Because then if you can't have the enclosures, then you can't have animals. So when this violation was discovered in the spring, it was also investigated by Conservation. Conservation did write a letter and advised that certain deadlines had to be adhered to. And I circled back to Mark Garrett in the Conservation Commission last week to inquire about what is the status of this. And he said nothing. There's been some conversations, but there has been no filing with the Concom. He also wrote an email, to the consultant who initially reached out to him advising that, you know, we've surpassed our deadline. What's going on? I was copied on that. So unless Mr. Fanoff only replied instead of reply all, you know, I'm unaware of any conversations to follow up on that. Now, one thing that's a game changer in this, and kind of entirely why I said, when this application came before us, Conservation was looked at as pretty much the primary authority in the matter because of the enclosures. Shortly thereafter, you know, maybe a month or 6 weeks later, we learned about the Mass DEP draft TMDL for the Pascamanskett. This location is immediately flanking the wetlands to the Pascamanskett, which we know is proposed to be impaired for pathogens. We know that this application proposes 160 animals immediately up against the wetland. So, you know, we don't know what the application is going to propose to conservation. Is it going to be for the status quo to keep the animals there? Or are they going to propose something where they move it? But, you know, now that we have this new information from DEP, it does take a different role for the board because our animal permit regulations are designed to protect public health. And now we know that we've got an application before the board to put an excessive number of birds up against the wetland that protects the Pascamanskett River from pollution. And pollution can be chemical or biological. And we know that it faces, you know, a biological pollutant, which is pathogens and those indicator organisms, you know, fecal coliform enterococci. So, you know, with that being said, not asking the board to make any decision today, but, you know, given the update, but I do think that we are going to have to make a decision, you know, if in August, if a notice of intent is not filed with the Conservation Commission.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Emily Michelle, do you have any questions?
Chris, can we direct that the applicant has to submit their application to Conservation Commission by a deadline, or no? Is that not helpful?
Yes, that's entirely possible. And, you know, failure to do that will result in a denial at the next meeting. Yes, that's perfect.
What would be a reasonable timeline if we were to set a deadline for them to apply to Concom?
With today being the 2nd, and again goes back to, you know, I know this week is a big week for small businesses. So, you know, I'd say submit to Concom no later than, let's give them 2 weeks, the 23rd.
Do we need a motion for this, Chris?
I think so, because then we could put it into the form of a letter to the
Okay.
applicant and the landowner.
Okay. Richard, do you have any comments or feedback?
No, I had the same question as Emily Michelle had.
I think it's a very, very good question. Very good point. Emily Michelle, I certainly support it. Do you want to make a motion?
Yeah, and Chris, I just want to make sure we would move to direct the applicant to apply to the Concom. Is that correct wording?
Yes.
To direct them. Okay. Okay. So finding that the issue at, finding that the animal permit for Plat 19, Lot 11 at 709 Russell's Mills Road is still pending a decision from the Conservation Commission without evidence of being on an upcoming agenda. I move to direct the applicant to submit an application to the Dartmouth Conservation Commission no later than July 23rd, 2024.
I second that. Michelle Keith votes yes. Emily Michelle, how do you vote?
Yes.
Okay, Richard, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Fantastic. Okie dokie. Let's see here. Where are we now? We are on the continued waiver and variance policy, Title 5. And let's see here. Dartmouth Board of Health supplemental regulations. Chris, what's going on with this?
So we had tabled this from the last meeting, you know, for, you know, further review and, you know, at the request of the board. And this is just a discussion item to see if, you know, the board wants to come up with a guidance document for when we're facing various situations with, you know, waivers and or variances. It does seem like we've had a pretty intense run on waivers and variances, especially since,
we have.
you know, the new construction permits are by right, so those don't go before the board. By right, I mean, if you fully comply with the regulations, then approval is mandatory. We can't withhold approval. So you see the ones that are needing waivers and variances, and some of the stuff that we've faced over the last year and a half. I think there's been 2 or 3 of them. I know there was one on Cedar Ave, there was one on Colebrook, and then another one on Horseneck. To see 3 of those in a 12-month period, I see stuff like that like once every 4 or 5 years, or 3 or 5 years, because with the amount of town water we have, we're very fortunate. So we don't see a lot of well variances, but we did on one of those 3, and then the other 2 had significant wetland issues as well. Actually, no, we did see it on the Colebrook as well. So 2 of the 3 were well issues, because there was a neighbor that couldn't connect to town water. So just seeing if the board wants to create a policy, and I was diving into 310 CMR 1500 today, because there is a section in there, it was just before the meeting, about considerations that the board should be making when issuing waivers. So I don't know if the board wants more time or to talk about it here.
I know Emily Michelle has her hand up, but I know Emily Michelle has been very concerned about this and very interested in coming up with some standards. What did you want to say, Emily?
Yeah, just I'd like a little bit more time. I spoke with Chris a little bit about it yesterday, and I'd like to organize myself more, and bring it before us. And I guess just a quick technical question to Chris. If I meet with you and I'm able to organize something in writing, is that something that could be passed along to board members in advance, or do you think that would count as, that would be an acceptable way to pass on information, and then we would discuss it as a group?
I think if we work on something and it's passed on to the board as an agenda, that's not an agenda item, that's not unusual. That's
Okay.
expected, that because we're not, it would then be problematic if the board members were sending things back to me and then I was then sending them to you.
Yes. Yeah,
And then that would
that
be
makes
direct
sense.
operations.
But an agenda item.
Yep.
Great.
Fantastic. Okay, Richard, do you have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions at the moment.
Fantastic. Okie dokie. Let's see here. I think that wraps that up. We're going to continue to work on that. We don't need any motion for that. And we do have this section of the agenda. Chris, have there been any items that have popped up over the last 48 hours that we need to address?
Yeah, so could we, the only thing would be is, well, I'll say one. We did get an alert from DPH that there were 2 mosquito samples that tested positive for West Nile virus today in Norfolk County. It is becoming that time of the year where we expect West Nile to begin to emerge and be detected in the state's mosquito surveillance program.
That's very unfortunate.
But it's become somewhat of a routine event. We just hope that the EEE detection does not occur.
That's
So
too bad, Chris.
So
I do want to mention, I want to say kudos to you. I'm holding the report that your department produced on very, very short notice. Okay, regarding the statewide pathogen TMDL comments, request for comments by the Mass DEP. And I just said, this is a huge document. Your staff and your team did a tremendous job on it, Chris. And I'm very, very grateful for all of the work that the department has put into this. Once again, on very short notice. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you.
Okay, so
The
this,
only thing would be
no-
is just if we could, August and possibly September.
okie dokie,
I'm sorry, excuse me. Did we miss the Jennifer Bartolotto
Oh,
Lot 32, Lot 73?
We did.
Yep.
That's on
second,
the,
oh, thank you. Thank you, Richard. I'm sorry. I missed something. Okay, where is it?
It's right after the Antonio Raposo application for the 30 chickens for the wetlands. Old
I don't
business,
have it
section
behind.
B. Looks like
Let
it's
me
got
see.
cut off there.
yeah, so what
Yeah,
happened?
I don't
was in the
have it on
scan-
mine.
In the
Yeah.
scanning of the agenda, that item was cut off. And it
Okay,
was-
because I'm going by online. I'm sorry, my apologies. It's not in front of me. So thank you so much, Richard, for picking that up because the report I have is just the scanned report. So what is it, Richard?
It's Jennifer Bartolotto, plat 32, lot 73 at 842 Fisher Road, domestic animal permit, application for 5 horses.
Okay, that's why I couldn't figure out how the horses got added to A. Remember, Chris, when I was reading part A, I said application for 30 chickens, and then I
Yeah.
was like, application for 5 horses, and I'm like, what's going on? Because the last I remembered, there were no horses at that site. So, okay, so the reason why it's saying 5 horses is we're missing that section. Thank you, Richard, for
Mhm.
alerting us to that. So, what's the deal with this, Chris?
So this is an
That
update to
makes
the
me so
board.
relieved.
So this is an
I
update
thought they
to
were
the
adding
board
horses. Yeah, go ahead. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
to just advise that the horses have been removed from the property. So,
Okay.
there's no further actions, provided that their new location in town doesn't result in something else. But the good news is that, the horses have been removed, so no further action at this time.
Okay, fantastic.
Okay.
And thank you so much, Richard, for seeing that, because like I said, on the online version that I have, it looks like the proposals were applying for 5 horses, so.
That's what
Like,
we have,
wow.
yeah.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So I think that we're done. Nobody else has any other issues to discuss or bring up?
So I just want to see if we can set an August and September meeting.
Okay, okie dokie. Let's see here. I thought we had an August meeting set up. Well, we have one on July 23rd, isn't it?
Yeah.
Let me
We
I
do.
see.
believe so, yeah.
So the July 23rd is not going to be able to count as August. We have to meet in August too, Chris?
Yes, we do.
Okay,
And it's good for, various applications if we have that preset for at least 2 months in advance because,
yes, it is good. It is good, but the summer's tough. The summer's a tough time for everybody. So, but I know that we have got to meet these deadlines to get to this work. So we have the 23rd. So when do we have to meet by to meet any particular deadline requirements, Chris, in August?
I would say the 21st
Okay,
of August.
so let's see here, August 21st. Why is that? Oh, August 21st. Okay, I'd have to do that late in the day, because I have to be in court that day. So I
You
knew,
could
I'm like, August
We could actually do
21st,
the
okay.
22nd, which would be the 30th day out.
Okay, the 21st I can do, but I would just have to be later on. Jim said I couldn't do it during the day early. That to be a court.
I can do 5:15 on the 21st.
I could do 5:15 too. Emily,
Yeah.
Michelle, can you do? Okay,
Sure.
so let's do
Yeah, I have a
that.
hard stop at 7, but yeah.
Okay, yeah, well, hopefully we'll have faster meetings. I'm sorry this has gone on so long. Oh, yeah, okay, so let's see here. Now we're jumping to September, Chris?
Yes.
And sorry, we
Okay,
just
and-
said Wednesday, August 21st at 5:15.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And then jumping to September, we need to meet by what date?
So I would say the 19th, because Friday meetings are unusual, and it gets a little bit problematic, if we were doing after 4:30 on a Friday, so it would be the 19th, would be the latest.
19th, so it would have to be later in the day on the 19th for me because I have a full morning that morning.
Same for me at 5:15
I
is
could
good.
do it anytime after 4 o'clock or later on that Thursday works for me.
Oh, okay, so 5:15. Board of Health meeting on Thursday, September 19th. True, yeah?
Yes.
Everybody fantastic. Okay, so that's good then, Chris. Do you want us to go to October?
Well, what we can also do is we can schedule October, November, December, but if you want to try doing October, let's do it while, so that would
You
be.
guys want to? I mean, it's ways off. I hate to think of October at this point, but let's see
yeah.
here.
Why
I
don't we
think I'd
hold-
actually rather wait on October. There's
Okay,
one thing I'm
wait.
trying to figure out. Sorry,
Yeah.
I don't have
Okay.
it today.
Same.
I know, fantastic. Okay, that's great. That makes me feel better too. So, okay, so we have our next meeting on July 23rd. Then we have August 21st, then we have September 19th. So I don't think we have anything else more to discuss, do we?
We do not.
All right, fantastic. So I'm gonna make a motion to adjourn. Can I have a second?
A
I'll
second.
second.
Okay, at 6:35, Michelle Keith votes yes. Emily Michelle, how do you vote?
Yes.
Yes, and Richard, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a wonderful
you.
4th of July. And Chris, thank you for
Yeah,
your
happy
hard
4th.
work.
Thank you. See
Take
ya.
care.
Thanks, everyone.